But also, if you are not an immigrant architect, but you know people around you that are immigrant professionals in the architectural field, how can you help them, and how can you direct them in the right direction on, you know, what to do with some of the challenges we face as immigrants. So I am, as Lourdes mentioned, I am a best-selling author of actually 2 books now. I am author of the Architecture of Motherhood, and I am a co-author of City Shapers. And I have a couple of awards and recognitions along the way. Some of them have been actually from the United States and some from the Dominican Republic, which is my home country. I am a Archie mom. I have 2 beautiful children, which to me is my biggest and best accomplishments ever. But I also am an advocate for the profession, for women architects and for mothers in the profession too, and for foreign architects all at the same time. I am part of the board of directors of the AI Tampa Bay, and I'm currently the Women Architecture Tampa Bay chair, and I was the founder of this committee back in 2018. I am currently the architect licensing advisor for the state of Florida, which is part of the reason why I'm giving this presentation. This have given me a lot of exposure to helping candidates, licensing candidates in the state of Florida, and we have a lot of immigrants in this group. And you know, I founded the Foreign Architects community in Facebook, which is right now at 2,500 members community. I've been a speaker. I've given a couple of keynotes presentations in different conferences, and just like smaller presentations, like for like other AI components throughout the United States. And I've been featured in a couple of magazines and architectural journals and podcasts and things like that. So if you ever want to hear anything that is related to some of the topics that I advocate for, you can probably find some of those podcasts from like Practice Disruptives, Context and Clarity, the Young Architect podcast, by Design, from the Honeycomb, etc., etc. So with that being said, let's get into the topic. So being an architect and being an immigrant architect, one of the first things that from my story that I've experienced was how much it hurt my ego not being able to call myself an architect when I came to the United States. If you know anything about my story, I am from the Dominican Republic, and I was an architect already, licensed architect back in the Dominican Republic before I came. I got my license back there in 2011, and I came to the United States in 2015. I had a business back there, which I opened back in 2000, end of 2009, beginning of 2010. And I was doing work. I was doing pretty well because I got a great opportunity with one project that opened a lot of doors for me. And was as I was being successful as a young architect back there, when I met my husband, like Lourdes explained, and now husband, and we decided to come to the United States, I thought everything was going to be easy. I thought, oh, I'm just going to bring my business to the United States because my husband was a Marine and he was changing careers. So the plan was for me to just bring my business, keep doing my thing, and he was going to transition, and I was going to be the one kind of supporting us while he was making that transition, which sounded like a great plan. But reality is, when I came to the United States, is, you know, my license was not valid. So I couldn't just practice and open a business practicing as an architect because I didn't have a license in the United States. And I didn't understand that before I come. Surprisingly enough, you will think, well, obviously, Gloria, you know, like you didn't do your own research before you came, like everything, like you need a license in the United States even to put nails or do your hair. So wouldn't you think that you will need a license to practice architecture? Yes, but I'll tell you what, it wasn't that obvious to me because things just work a little different back in the DR. And one thing that I've learned throughout my path in this whole architecture life in the United States, especially Florida, is a lot of immigrants are just like me in that matter. Like, we come to this country clueless on how strict things are and how much liability is on us, and why it is so important going through the process of getting, reporting all the hours, verifying your education, and getting the exams, et cetera, et cetera. So first thing first is, when we come to the United States as residents, is when the rule applies that you can't anymore call yourself architect. It doesn't matter if you had a license back in your home country, like I had. As soon as you become a resident in any state of the United States, you immediately have to take off that word out of your signatures, your email signatures, your business cards, your social media, different accounts that you may have in LinkedIn and Instagram, Facebook, whatever that is, because as you're living in a state, in this case, Florida, you will be misleading anybody who might meet you after you became a resident here or a citizen, kind of saying that you're still an architect and you can practice in this country, when that's not the truth. So we need to be very careful, because this is penalized by law. And not only that, if you get caught trying to still say you're an architect, because you have a license outside of this country, you can. I've witnessed a couple of cases where people get penalized with like exams and the rights of doing certain things because of this whole situation. There was a specific case in New York that was pretty unfortunate, of this lady who got, kind of like a slap in the hand, but like she wasn't able to take the exams for a while or something like that, just because of this happened. I don't even know if she ever finished. So just so you know, it's a serious thing to take into account. But most of immigrants don't understand that when they come to the United States. So I think that's the first thing to keep in mind is, we are not architects until we get that license in Florida or any other state in the United States. And there is a reason for it, and we need to respect it, and we need to put our ego on the side and just do what we have to do to get there. So with that being clarified, I want to kind of go over real quick some of the differences between what is considered a standard path for someone who, maybe was born here or not, but like study here and have all of their education from the United States. Their path is different, because usually somebody here will go to a NAP accredited school of architecture, so the education will be already okay. And then after that, you have to report your experience, the AXP, which the minimum on most of the states is 4,740 hours. And then the examination, which includes, the ARE are 6 exams right now with 6 different divisions. Then after that, you get your license in your state. In this case will be Florida. And then if you're, thinking other states, there's some other rules that may apply or may not to those states. Some states may have a little extra experience requirement, and some, like California, require an extra exam. So just things to keep in mind. That's not the case here in Florida. We're pretty good on just kind of keep it to the basics, I will say. And then if you want to, as a person that is taking the standard path, that is not an immigrant, you may or may not apply for the NCAR certification. You don't have to, just, it's not mandatory or required for anything in your career, but you can have it after you get your license and you complete these 3 steps. Does that make sense? And this is important to keep in mind, because things kind of shift a little bit when with some of the paths that we have as immigrants. So just to recap, you have to fulfill education with an accredited school of architecture. Then you have to complete experience, and then you have to take the exams. Then you go to your architectural board in the state, in this case, Florida, get your license, and then you can apply to NCAR certification if you want it or not. This is very similar to a foreign education path, which means you are an immigrant or you're from the United States, but you study abroad and your education is from a different country. You finish your school, master's, whatever it is, in, I don't know, Spain or whichever. And then you are trying to practice in the United States. So what you need to do is the education is now evaluated through an ESA, which is done by a sister institution from NCARB called NAB. So the ESA evaluation is what an immigrant that has a foreign education, or someone who is from here that has a foreign education, has to go through to get that education accredited, if that makes sense. Then the rest of the steps is exactly the same as the previous path that I show. So the biggest hurdle that an immigrant that only has, let's say, foreign education is that they need to get through this ESA. And this is not accepted in some states like New York, but Florida does accept the ESA. So long story short, you get your education accredited, you go through the ESA. Most of the time it comes with some deficiencies of like codes and regulations and maybe some credits of English, and some people have more credits than others. I've seen people that comes back with like a minimum of like 6 credits. That was my case when I took the ESA evaluation wrongly, which I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But I took the ESA evaluation initially thinking that was the path I needed to take when it wasn't, because I do hold a license outside of the United States. But I was taking this path. Nobody told me any different. I made a lot of mistakes, and it's the main reason why I'm such an advocate about this topic, is because as immigrants, we make a lot of mistakes because nobody around us know anything, especially family and friends who are not related to this career. So we start taking steps kind of like blindly, and we spend a lot of money and time that we could save if we just knew what to do exactly depending on our case. So yes, the ESA is a little bit expensive. There's some cost involved and time involved, because you usually have to obviously pay for the ESA, which is over $2,000 currently. And then whatever credits of deficiency that you have to fulfill, you have to go back to school and fulfill that. So again, I've seen people that have only 6 credits, but I've seen people that have close to 30 credits, which is almost going back to school for you know how long. And that's a lot of money and time. So then after you complete that, you can usually you get the green light to start taking the examination, the AREs, and experience you can be reporting anytime. But pretty much the path is similar, because after that you go to your state, you get your license, and if you want to, you get the NCARB certification or not, but you don't have to, even as a foreign educated person. This whole thing changes a little bit when you are a foreign architect with a foreign license from a foreign country. In my case, I had a license I have still a license in the Dominican Republic, and I didn't know that there was this foreign architect path that was available to me as a foreign architect, not as a foreign educated person. So the difference is this path is shorter. It has a lot of advantages for us foreign architects, because one is the ESA evaluation is no longer required. They send you a transcript request that you need to send to your college, and it's just a 1 page or 2 pages PDF that needs to be filled out, and then your college will send that directly to NCARB, and then the education is approved. They don't evaluate your education thoroughly like they will do with the ESA. What they actually do is making sure that you actually finish school, and that's pretty much it. But they don't go over like every little class to make sure that it's compatible to whatever the education is here, which is what's done with the ESA, if that makes sense. Then after that, you obviously have to, report your experience and take the examination. The difference is when you are in this path, the foreign education path, if you, there's certain things that apply to us just as anybody else. In this path, when you are reporting hours that you may have experienced from your home country, a lot of immigrants come here and they said, oh my gosh, but I've been working in my home country for 4, 5, 10 years. And then they try to report all these hours in bulk. And what happens is the system cuts them halfway, because any hours that you report from the day you're reporting 8 months after that, it's cut in half. So what I'm trying to say is, if I am a foreign architect, a foreign educated professional, and I have 4 years of experience, and I'm trying to report 2,000 hours, I don't know, I'm just putting a number of foreign experience, and I'm submitting 1,000 because they're older than 8 months from the date I'm submitting them, that 1,000 hours get cut in half to be only 500. So a lot of immigrants get hit by this part because they can come with a lot of experience, but they get cut because of the whole, reporting in bulk hours that are older than 800, 8 months is what I'm trying to say. It's kind of frustrating, right? The other thing that happens too is we have 2 options to report hours, which is option A, as architectural practice, and you can report all the hours under a licensed architect in that option. But you have option O, which means others, and those hours you can only report up to halfway. So it's like about 1,820 hours or something like that, that you can report as international. So just imagine you can only report half, but then you report all these hours and they are cut in half. So you kind of ended up being maybe like 25% of where you need to be, even so you may have all these hours of experience. Does that make sense? So with that being said, the difference that it makes when you're a foreign architect with a license in your home country or another country, and you opt to and are accepted in the foreign architect path, which is this one I'm showing here, is that besides you don't need to go through the ESA anymore, your hours of experience that are international are accepted 100%, or even if they're national hours, it doesn't matter. All the hours that are older than 8 months, they don't get cut off halfway. If you report 1,000 hours, then the system accepts 1,000 hours. It doesn't matter if those hours are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. And it's a huge advantage for foreign architects because it really helps us to maximize that halfway of hours that we're allowed to report from a foreign country, and then we can focus on the option 8 hours that we need to report, which is the other half. With that being said, examination is the same for everybody. We have to take the 6 exams no matter what. But one thing that has come now from as an advantage for foreign architects is the NCAP recently approved some accommodations for people with English as second language, which allow you to take advantage of having a little bit of extra time when taking the exams, which is one of the biggest challenges I had when taking the exams. I read very slow in English. I read very fast in Spanish, which is my native language, but not in English. Like I literally read almost like halfway of what a person who English is their first language. I might be like halfway a page when they're like finishing the page when it's in English. And it's just how it is. And just imagine taking an exam that is time, like the AR is. A lot of people fail because we get caught with the time. So they open this accommodation to include the hours, the extra hours, but also they allowing now people to bring in a dictionary with them, which is really helpful a lot. Some states don't accept these accommodations, so make sure that if you are applying for a license outside of Florida, because Florida does accept that, accommodation with no problem. But if you're applying to any state that might not accept this, they will require you to take that one exam that you took with that accommodation. So that's just something to keep in mind. So after you fulfill these 3 steps, education is already, confirmed. You report all of your hours of experience and you completed your ARE. The next thing that you do is you send this credential verification form to your home country, to the board that regulates your license. That needs to be confirmed right before you finish the whole process. And you do this, it's this graphic to me is a little bit off because this credential form you have to do at the beginning to be accepted in the foreign architect path. But then after you complete the exams, you need to send it again because they want to make sure that your license in your home country is still in good standing. When that's done, then you have to get your NCAR certification. So let me go back to this part, because in all the other examples of path that a person can take, you take the exams and then you get the license. And then if you want to, you get your NCAR certification. That's for the standard path. And that's for this one, the foreign education path. But when you're in the foreign architect path as a foreign architect with a license in outside of the United States, you have to get your NCAR certification to then apply to reciprocity in the state that you want that license, and then you get your license in the United States, or sorry, in that state that you want from the United States. I want to talk about something that happens with this foreign architect path. Florida, the state of Florida is one of the few, it's very little, I think it's down to 3 or 4 states that don't accept the foreign architect path as the one you will use to get your first license in the United States, or like your initial license in a state of the United States. Florida is one of them. So it was kind of hard for me because I wanted my license in Florida. I live in Tampa and I wanted to practice here. But there's some ways around it. They do accept it as a second license. So what I did, and what a lot of people from Florida that are foreign architects and want to take advantage of all the great advantages that this path has, is they apply to a license in another state first that will accept the foreign architect path as the path for the initial license in the States, and then they apply to Florida right after. So what I did is I applied to Georgia, which had no problem with the foreign architect path being my first, to get my first license. And the same day I got the Georgia license, I'd apply to Florida, pay my fees, fill out the forms, and about maybe 2-3 weeks later, I got my license in Florida, and I've been practicing since 2019. So I hope you guys have some questions about this. We're gonna go over the questions at the end, but if you have any questions about the difference on this path, advantages or disadvantages, whatever it is, I'm gonna go over with you at the end. I want to go touch base with a couple of things before we go to the Q&A at the end. Is some of the most common challenges that we face in this process. I just explained some of the paths and options that we have as immigrants, and advantages and disadvantages on one path over the other. But what happens when you as an immigrant are in the midst of it? Like I experienced this myself in this list, and I'm gonna go over a couple of them, but I also have a lot of people that I mentor in the foreign architects private community in Facebook, where I mentor hundreds of people right now. And everybody has a different story, because you get to see people that are from Latin American countries and Europe, and Asian people and Indian people and all over the world, and everybody has different challenges and different experiences, but some of the things that we have in common are in this list. So first of all is a lot of people really struggle, as I explained, with the part of not being able to call themselves architects. We don't know how to introduce ourselves when we go to social events. We don't understand how to apply to jobs, because we can we can call ourselves architects. We can apply to jobs, positions that are for architects, and it gets very confusing for immigrants, especially at the beginning, because they're like, well, what am I supposed to apply to? Like, I am an architect, but I'm not, and they want an architect, and I feel like I can do the job, but I can't. And main thing is orienting people to understand there's other positions like, project coordinator, associate architect, associate designer, architectural designer, things like that, that have similar responsibilities, but not necessarily are, requiring that you actually have a license in the state that you're trying to get that job. Language barriers is obviously the main thing. As I explained, taking the exams when you speak English as second language can be really challenging, but also practicing. When I started my first job in an architecture firm in the United States, there was a lot of verbiage that I wasn't familiar with. One of the things I always said when I do this type of presentations is, the reason why I made a mistake let me go back to this, when I was doing the foreign education path and I paid for an ESA that I didn't need at the end, was because I didn't understand that in my NCAR profile or record, there is a tab that says registrations, and I didn't understand that registration meant license. So I never fill out anything in that tab because I didn't even understand what that meant. And in the meanwhile, I was spending money and time, wasting money and time trying to get an ESA, and then applying to colleges of schools of architecture to fulfill the deficiencies that I got from my ESA evaluation, when I didn't need to do any of it because I already had a license outside of the United States. So my point is, some of those language barriers doesn't limit to just, being shy on, speaking in public or talking to colleagues in English. It goes beyond that. Immigration issues, there's a lot of people that come here with like work visas or student visas, and then if that expires, they kind of struggle because they're in the middle of the exams and all this other stuff. So obviously the best advice to that is getting an immigration lawyer or attorney that can help the candidate to deal with that, because we don't have any say on it at all. Anyone from AIA, NCARB, we don't get involved at all with anything related to immigration issues because it's legal stuff. So we don't want to, in every case is different, and we don't have the knowledge to really give advice in that matter. Lack of connections is a big one, because as I explained at the beginning, most of the problems that we face is we come to this country and our family and friends most of the time are not architects, don't know anything about architecture, don't understand what we need to do to get our license and to practice architecture in this country. So you get a lot of advice that is wrong, and a lot of people can be very discouraging about it. I was one that was told literally not to even try to get my license because it was not worth it, because the person who told me this said, I've never met anybody who has got their license, and I don't think you're gonna do it. So don't waste your time. You're gonna spend 4 or 5 years trying for nothing. And you know what? Here I am. Yes, it took me a couple of years, but I finished. I got my license in 2 different states, and now I practice and I have my own business. So that's one thing to tell immigrants is, don't get discouraged for nothing that anybody that doesn't know anything about architecture will tell you, because they don't know any better. So understanding where to start, that's another thing. People come here and have no idea that NCAR regulates things, that you have to go to the state where you the state board where you're trying to get your license. In this case, we're in Florida, but again, this can be beyond Florida. And understand their rules, and if they have extra requirements, like I said about California, and that extra exams that they have. So like you need to kind of get a little bit familiar with the fact that you come to the United States and you're getting a license in one state doesn't mean that you have a universal license that will allow you to practice in every single state. Every state is separate, and every state have their own rules and regulations. And if you get licensed in one state, it doesn't mean you can practice in another state unless you have a license there too. So that type of knowledge is some of the things that I've noticed a lot that people kind of struggle with. You know, you will be surprised of how many people, this one here, creating the NCAR record. Immigrants struggle a lot with that first step. I've had people that I have mentored and that I'm mentoring currently. I have had to literally get like on Zoom calls and help them to get some stuff done, or they will be on WhatsApp sending me print screen saying, what do I put in this one question? Like, I have no idea what they mean with this. Like, it's really hard on us. And this all comes back to language barriers. You know, some of other challenges that we have that sometimes is really hard to help people with is, especially if they're not from the Dominican Republic, which is, you know, my home country. I know things are there. I have connections that I can connect people with. But if someone from India is having an issue with their college back in India, or with their board back in, you know, in, I don't know, Colombia, I don't have a way to help them. And it's really hard for NCAR, anyone from NCAR, to kind of assist an immigrant with that matter, because that is an issue that is related to the home country regulations, the school of architecture in that country, the board of architecture in that country. So sometimes people struggle getting the forms filled out, the fact that NCAR don't receive anything directly from the candidate, so everything have to be sent mail from the institution, and sometimes they don't offer mailing services, so it makes it really challenging for people. Then the other part is having to translate that paperwork. You know, so the institution have to send the paperwork to the translator, then the translator can send it to the institution, you know, NCARB in this case, or, you know, NAP if they're doing an ESA, etc., etc. But all that is money, it's time, it can be very confusing, because if you haven't done it before, you know, you don't know what you're doing, blah blah blah. Then when you pass all that, and you're, you know, and you're already taking exams, and you, or like, you got the green light to take them, and you're applying to jobs. Obviously this can happen way before you even start trying to get your license. But when you come to this country and you're trying to apply to a job, another huge challenge that immigrant architects have, is adapting their resumes and portfolios to the ways that things are seen and done in the United States. You know, translating everything, making sure that if you're applying to, kind of like tailoring your portfolio, like if you're applying to a job where what they do is a lot of healthcare, and you only have experience in retail, like how do you sell yourself to make them understand that you're valuable, and that even if you don't have knowledge and experience in healthcare, you can still be a great team player in their company, etc., etc. The value that you bring, and how they're going to be value to you too, etc., etc. A lot of immigrants just really struggle with this part. Like, they applied and applied and applied and applied, and they spend months and months sometimes without getting any response back, or like a job in the industry. And obviously at some point most of us do get there, but it takes a little bit sometimes to figure it out. Understanding job titles, what I mentioned before, you know, you can apply to anything that is for an architect, but, you know, project manager, project coordinator, architectural associate, architectural designer, etc., are positions that we're not aware of sometimes, but are things that we can apply to. Learning about building codes is huge, because building codes in any state of the United States is, you know, can be bananas to some of us, because things might be very different in our home country. So getting, you know, used to how you have to research, and all the different things that apply to building codes here, depending on the type of projects that you're working on, and everything that is involved with it. It can be really challenging, especially because everything is in English. There's a lot of verbiage that is sometimes difficult to understand, even if you're an English speaker as first language. Building codes can be challenging for anybody, even more for someone who has English as second language. So taking the time to get to know the building codes for your daily basis practice and job, but also for taking the AREs is it's key. Uh, learning building materials and systems can be very different from what you were used to in your home country. Learning new softwares, like I came here only knowing AutoCAD, and I have to learn Revit because every job I applied, that's what they were using. It doesn't mean that every firm here uses Revit. I'm just saying that was my experience. I had to learn Revit in order to get a job. And standing out. How do you stand out in your job and in this industry in general, in your area, when you are new, when you may not have connections, when your first language is not English, when you're just starting over, like you're leaving everything behind, family, friends, everything. Most of the time it's like, how do you stand out? So for that, I have a couple quick tips. I think this can apply to anybody, not just to foreign architects, but especially to us. So first of all, is networking. I think this is an obvious one, but to me, this open so many doors. I think that networking, getting involved with the community, attending to networking events as much as possible, it was my first step. I came in 2015, but I didn't really start networking heavily until end of 2016, almost beginning of 2017. And the reason why was because I didn't know. I didn't know any better. I didn't understand the importance of AI8 in my local chapter. I didn't understand of some of the other uh, events and organizations that are related to the AAC industry that could help me make connections, know people, and open doors for me. Like NAWI, the National Women Architecture committee. You have many others like NOMA, and many other things that you can kind of reach out and get involved with. The chambers of commerce is another one, and the list can go on and on, but there's many resources that we can use to get involved. Obviously you have to be consistent. Going to one event is not gonna make it. People needs to know who you are, remember your name, remember your face, and the only way you can accomplish that is by being consistent, attending to many of these events, getting involved, and being authentic, being trustworthy, reliable. Listen to other people, follow up with people, and that way you will build really long-lasting relationships. Volunteering was my second step. I started getting involved with these events and networking, but then I realized that the best way for me to help others and help myself at the same time was by volunteering. Currently, I'm still part of the board of directors. I've been part of the board of directors of the AIA Tampa Bay since 2018. I was associate director. I've been in different positions. I've been director as is director, secretary, currently the treasurer, and hoping to serve for many more years. But not only through that, I've served in the ARE bootcamp community. I currently serve as the licensing architect licensing advisor for AIA Florida with NCARB. And all that has opened doors for me to meet people, to help people, and to really put myself in a position where I have to learn stuff so I can help others. I think the main thing to do is to understand what you're passionate about. What are the things you can give between your time, your talent? You can give any of those two? Can you give money? It's kind of understanding how you can help and give back. Do these things for the right reasons, because again, yes, these open a lot of doors for me, but I've helped thousands of people at this point, and it's the most rewarding thing, besides being a mom. So, say yes to things that aligns with what you believe in your principles. Don't be kind of afraid of saying yes to things and trying new stuff that you might not be too familiar with. But, just keep in mind, being a volunteering makes you a leader, and true leaders at the end are servants. We are serving people as leaders. So if in your heart you are a servant leader, then um, please apply to volunteer with the AIA, especially with the women architecture committees throughout Florida. And the last thing I did personally after first two steps, I network, I start volunteering, then I start building up my personal brand. Right now, all of my accounts on social media has been verified. I have thousands of followers everywhere. I've helped all this came out because of all the people I've helped, all the conferences I've been speaking to. My English, as as you know, is not perfect. English is my second language, but that didn't stop me. Let me go back to this. Say yes to what aligns with your belief and principles, and take risks, right? So some of the things I did was I started giving presentations and keynote presentations, and this really allowed me to meet even more people that were beyond my community, beyond Tampa, beyond the state of Florida, and then beyond the United States. So my point is, if someone like me that comes from such a humble background, my mom and dad got divorced when I was 5. We didn't have any money. I had to work through college since the very beginning to pay my school because isn't that easy to get a loan back in the Dominican Republic. So my point is, I come from a very humble background. I'm not rich yet. I hope I get there at some point in my life. But I feel that I have established myself as an authority in certain matters because of all these efforts, all these giving back, all these helping people, all this volunteering, all this networking, all this putting myself out there, even as an immigrant and speaking in front of people that their first language is English. And I don't care. I go and put myself out there and I do it. And I even, as Lourdes mentioned, I even ended up, um, you know, um, publishing books, and those aren't in English. And yes, it was hard to do, but here I am. So my point is, with this, you know, let's connect. Here are all my handles. You can find me everywhere. Just Google my name, you'll find me. But my point is, please, please get involved. Reach out if you have any questions. And if you are the immigrant that needs help, now you have this connection with me. But if you know anybody, if you're not an immigrant and you know immigrants that might need help, keep some of these things in mind. The ways to help immigrants is to help them understand and clarify the steps they need to take towards their goal, whether it's getting licensed, which I highly encourage every time because of the obvious reasons, but also if their goal is not getting licensed, but like just getting a better job, or some people sometimes get jobs in industries that are not related to architecture because they give up on applying to jobs and not getting opportunities. So maybe you can become a mentor and saying, let me review your resume. Let me give you a feedback of maybe what's missing. What is the missing information that you need to put there so people actually, to stand out, to see those recruiters and HR officials to see your value, to understand how you are going to be valuable for the firm, et cetera, et cetera. Understanding connections like resources. Some of the resources are obviously your AIA chapter, the architect licensing community with NCARB, which I'm part of. The ARE Facebook group, the foreign architects community in Facebook, and many others. So just with that, I finished officially my presentation. We have, let me see, about 11 minutes to go over questions. So Becky?
Thanks, Gloria. You have some activity in the chat. So let me get to the chat questions first, and then we will answer the people that have your hand raised. So please go ahead and keep your hand raised. Thanks for doing that. So your first question is from Luciano. What is the benefit of the NCARB certification? And thank you to the fellow attendees that also put some answers into that, but I will still pose these questions to Gloria.
That is a great question. Some people might say, you know, I actually met somebody that was like, oh, I am gonna give up my NCARB certification because I haven't seen the advantage of it. And that's fine. That may apply to some people, but to most people, first of all, is the recognition that you completed all your process to become licensed. And that applies also with getting a membership with AIA. You get to put AIA and NCARB next to your name. So that's the first and most simple reason. But it goes beyond that, because especially when you are the foreign architect, holding your NCARB certification has great, immense value. Why? Because anytime that, first of all, as you know, as I explained with the foreign architect path, you get the NCARB certification first, and then they send all of your paperwork to the state that you're applying as reciprocity, and you don't have all that yourself. They do it for you. So that is, to me, the biggest advantage. All your documents and paperwork is all together in one place, and they take care of it anytime you need reciprocity with any other state. Does that make sense? So to me, that's the biggest advantage, not having to deal with all that over and over again whenever you want a reciprocity with other state. That has been, to me, one of the biggest things. Besides that, obviously, you know, all the resources they offer after your license, they have CEUs for free, and you know, many resources for architects in general within their community. So those are just a few of the advantages I can list.
Great. Excuse me. Next question is for you personally. Did you maintain your license in Georgia after you got your Florida license?
Yes. I haven't practiced, but I've kept. You don't have to keep it after you get the Florida one. You can let that one go. I haven't let it expire because I just went through the hurdles to get it, and it's pretty cheap to keep it. And if I ever need to do a job there, then I won't have to restart all the process again on getting it. So why not to keep it? But you don't have to, if that's the question.
Okay. Next question. This is from Ana Alvarez. I'm waiting for my foreign credential architect. After that, can I do my ARE? I can do my ARE, correct?
Yes. You will see in your NCARB record that you will be allowed to schedule your exams. As soon as you get all that approved, you will see that you will have access to schedule, and that is pretty much the green light to start taking exams whenever you feel ready. Okay. And just to clarify, and this might be a question that comes later or not, but the fact that you are not allowed to take the exams yet doesn't mean you can report hours. The hours you can start reporting right now. It doesn't matter if your education hasn't been evaluated and all that. Start reporting hours as soon as possible.
Okay. And then somebody asked for your Facebook link to your mentor group, and then Shadia backed you up and already put it in the chat. So if anybody was looking for the foreign architect group, all right, hold on, still checking. Everybody was active. Thank you, everybody, for the questions and the back and forth in the chat. I know there was another question in here. I'm just trying to get to it. Oh, as immigrants with language barriers, how did you study for the ARE exams? Any tips that helped you through the process? And before you answer, I'll give you some advice if the people didn't see it in the chat. Shadia said that she studied with other people that English was their first language. And then John Taylor said participating with your local AIA chapter. So if you have anything else to add to that, would be great.
There's a lot of things. So first is one of the things that helped me the most was joining the ARE bootcamp by Michael Risica, because there is actually a lot of immigrants there that are kind of going through the same thing. But I think it really gave me a lot of insight to understand how to study for the exams and how to be faster at reading. So one of the things that with the timing, at my time taking the exams, we didn't have the accommodation with the extra time and the dictionary. So I had to kind of do it, you know, the old way. And I failed a couple of exams because the time wasn't enough for me. So I had to learn and taught myself how to take the exams faster. And one of the ways that was really helpful besides the boot camp was taking a lot of practice exams and time myself. And it really helped me to create like a system on where I develop, how can I explain? I developed a way of understanding that I need to go over the questions that I really know first, do those fast. You know what I'm saying? Because those are the ones that I know. I don't have to overanalyze it. I see the question, I see the possible answers, I make my choice, I move on. I don't spend 5 minutes on it. And then kind of the ones that I was struggling, making a quick decision, moving forward, marking it, never leaving anything unmarked because of how things are now with the exams. Like you can lose those if you take the break and all that kind of stuff. But I think that focusing on answering the ones I know first and fast, and then going back, making an estimated guess with the ones I felt doubts with. And then if I had time at the end, then going back to those instead of spending too much time on the ones I wasn't sure of and then not having enough time for the ones that I already knew. Does that make sense? It's like sometimes in the exams we get caught on the ones that we don't know as much, we are not too familiar with, we are topics that we struggle with, and we spend too much time on those. So taking a lot of practice exams before the exams, the real exams, really helped me to develop that system of kind of like check on myself in the exam saying, Gloria, you're spending too much time on this and you don't know the answer. So just make a decision of which one you think is best and move on to the next one, because every question is worth 1 point. So spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes in one is a waste of time because you might still get it wrong anyway. So try to get the ones you know right first. Does that make sense? So that's what helped me the most.
I think that's good advice for anybody, despite what your first language may or may not be.
It's more about exam taking, but yeah, it does apply a lot to English as second language candidates. Next question.
Okay, and Jorge had put a comment. Gloria, you have helped me so much with your advice. You are a blessing. I was lost until I discovered the foreign architect path, and all because of you. Thank you. And they do have their hand raised. So Jorge, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, hello. My name is Irgesta and I am from Albania. So again, I want to thank Gloria because I reached out to her when I first came to the country 5 years ago, and she was a blessing because so willing to help and immediately answered my email. And Gloria, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you for being here, and I'm glad I helped. And if you still have any questions, please reach out.
Absolutely.
I'm a phone call away.
Yeah, so I'll be very, very quick. I don't want to take much time, but you mentioned before that for us in Florida, in order to get the license here, we cannot take the Florida exam. We need to take it in another state. I'm a little bit confused on how that works. Like after, let's say you took the Georgia license, what did you do? Did you give the exam again in Florida?
No. Let me clarify that. Good. This is a good point, and this is one of the things that a lot of immigrants are confused with. So let's start with the fact that the exams are separate from the license. The exams are universal for every state.
Oh.
The exams you're taking it, and they are valid for every state.
Okay.
The exams are 6 exams only. And obviously there's a state like, again, California, that has an extra exam that it only applies to them and you take them directly with them. But if you're not applying to California, you don't need to worry about it, right? So you take your 6 AREs and you're done in that part. But the license is different. So after you fulfill the 3 main steps: education, job experience, and exams, then you have to go to your board and apply for the license itself. So the foreign architect path, let me go back in my presentation. Foreign architect path. Sorry. The foreign architect path, when you're done with those 3 steps, and
Mhm.
you fill out these forms that they ask you through this path, you
Mhm.
need to apply to reciprocity, because when you're applying to a license in this path, the foreign education path,
Mhm.
you will have a jurisdiction, which in this case might be Florida. And you just apply directly to the board of Florida, the architectural board of Florida, and you get your license first. And again, you don't have to get the certificate, the NCAR certification, if you don't want to.
Okay.
Okay, but when you're a foreign architect, in your NCAR record, instead of saying jurisdiction Florida, it will say jurisdiction foreign architect, because you already have a license outside of the United States, and they
Mhm.
acknowledge that. You can practice here, but they acknowledge that you hold a license outside of here, and you're doing a process to get a license in this one state so you can practice here. So when you're done with that, then you apply to reciprocity, not Elysian licensure, but reciprocity, from your home country license to whatever state you're gonna get it. The problem is there's like 3 or 4 states that won't accept the foreign architect path for you to obtain your first initial license in the United States. No exams, license. So what you do is you go and apply for a license in a state like Georgia that does accept that. You fill out a couple of forms, paid a fee of like, I think $90, and wait for the board to approve you. And when you get that license, you applied again for a second reciprocity. Remember, you had reciprocity first from your home country
Right.
to whatever state. But Florida is like, no, I'm not gonna be the first state giving you that license. You have to go to another state first. So you apply to reciprocity to Georgia, get that license, and then apply again to reciprocity with Florida. And then Florida says, okay, I'm the second, I'm fine. Let's move on. Is that
Okay, that makes absolute sense now. It's way more clear, because I thought that the exams might be different for different jurisdictions, but that's
No.
great. No, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Gloria, I know we're past 1, but there's still a few more questions, so I don't know if you have time to answer these, or if we can.
I have
or if
time.
you-
Yeah, we can go
Okay.
over a couple of them. Yes.
All right, and for those of you that do have to drop off, this is being recorded. So we do have a question on who to contact in Tampa Bay at AI Tampa Bay for the Women in Architecture Committee, and I believe you're involved with that.
I am the chair, so I'm your girl. Just contact me.
Wonderful. And then some other advice from Jose. Why is NCARB now allowing ESL extension, but they do not accept English classes as an educational credit?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Why NCARB is accepting the ELS, but what?
They're now allowing ESL extensions, but they do not accept English classes as educational credits.
They do accept it. Okay, let's start with the fact that this is evaluated by NAB, not NCARB. So your education, let me go back to this, because this is where people get confused. Remember that the education is controlled by NAB, not by NCARB. NCARB only, in the foreign architect path, only confirms that you had an education, that you completed a degree somewhere. They don't care what was given them at this point. When you're in this path or this path, you have to go through NAB. So NAB is the one not accepting whatever credit with English that you might not be accredited. And most of the time this happens because it's coming from a school that they don't accept or things like that. But with that being said, so make sure that you double check with them, because when I took my ESA evaluation, and I was here again for no reason, one of the 6 credits that I got back was 3 for English and 3 for codes and regulations. And the English credits, because my transcripts from my college didn't have English. I knew English. I took actually 2 years of English in an Institute of English in the Dominican Republic, but I never submitted that paperwork, right? So to NAB, I didn't know English. because I didn't have in paperwork that I knew English. So they were asking me for 3 credits of English as a minimum, which to me is very little, to be honest, to be practiced in this country. But that's the minimum they required. And they required for me to fulfill 3 credits of English, and they only asked me to take a comprehensive exam. I didn't have to take a full class. I didn't have to go to a specific school. I didn't have to, take a specific master degree English class. It was a comprehensive English exam, and that was enough with codes and regulations. So I needed to take the class, and that was the difference, because the comprehensive exam for English, it will only cost me $80, while the codes and regulation class, because it was a master degree class, it was over $3,000 just the tuition with the school. And that was a huge difference. So my advice is go back and double check, because they do accept English education. It might be that maybe the way it is translated or something's missing, because they do accept it, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Does it make a difference to register yourself as International Associate AIA or just Associate AIA?
Yes, it makes a difference, because Associate AIA means that you are, let me go back. Associate AIA means that you are someone who study architecture either in this country or outside of this country and have never held a license anywhere. That is for emerging professionals from either the United States or immigrants who have never have a license, don't have a license either in the United States or outside of the United States. An International Associate AIA membership means that you are, you can take this path. It means that you are someone who holds a license outside of the United States. And even so, you can practice with an International Associate AIA membership. It recognizes that you are a foreign architect and that you hold a license somewhere outside of the United States. And to me, that has value.
And then John Taylor, thanks for the links that you put in the chat. He did do a reminder, if you are coming to Florida with, it's licensure by endorsement is what it's called in Florida, that there is the wind mitigation class if you're going to another state first and then doing licensure by endorsement in Florida. And he did send a link to that is something extra beyond the ARE that will have to be done. And he did send a link about from DBPR, so those are very good links to have. Okay, and another question. What is required time for NCARB to transfer your records to Florida? What is the difference between the blue folder and the green folder?
Let me read that again. Required time for NCARB to transfer your records to Florida. So I'm hoping that I'm understanding this question correctly. So NCARB, to me, they don't have what you're asking is how much time if there's a minimum time or like maximum time, sorry, that they give you to submit those records. I don't think there's any. I think unless your record expires and you don't pay for it, I don't think you really have like an expiration scene to do it, if that makes sense. Not that I'm aware of. But obviously, if you want to move forward with your case, you want to do it as soon as possible. But if it takes you, some people, it even takes months and like over a year or something to get all that done. It depends on the person's situation. A lot of people that are from Venezuela and Cuba struggle a lot with the paperwork, the initial paperwork, and it just takes time, and it doesn't expires. The difference between the blue folder and green folder, I don't know what that question is. Can you specify a little bit more about that, green folder and blue folder?
Jose, if you're still on, if you want to unmute yourself and clarify, I'm not sure that question either. Jose still on?
He might not be here.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the blue folder and green folder.
Yeah, I think one has to do with reciprocity, and the other one has to do with initial registration, something like that, which they keep asking, is like, do you need to ask NCARB to send your transcripts, audio documentation with the green folder. And I was like, okay, I think I'm doing initial registration by exam and not transferring. And then it's a miscommunication between Florida and NCARB. I think whomever is receiving the information from NCARB is not.
Something doesn't sound right. I think maybe you got someone in customer support that was referring to something with the wrong name, because I personally haven't heard of something like that.
I think it's on the Florida website that tells you to transfer, ask NCARB to transfer your records in a different. I don't know how they communicate to each other about.
But see,
One is
that's
a
the
blue
part that
folder
is
and one is a green
confusing,
folder.
because this is the part that is confusing from whatever this person told you, is because when you apply to reciprocity through NCARB, the only thing you do is like you go online to your NCARB record, you apply for the reciprocity through NCARB, you paid a fee of I think $350 or something like that, and then you don't know anything else. Anytime I've applied for reciprocity, which I started reciprocity with New York, for example, I've never been asked like, oh, which folder should I, like, you are literally telling them through the system that you're applying to reciprocity to whichever state, and whatever they're requiring, NCARB just send it. Like that's the part I think there's something is off from what this person told you, because you shouldn't have to specify to them what folder to send, because you're literally telling them through your NCARB record that you're applying to reciprocity to this one state or initial license or whatever that is. So the system should automatically understand what is it that they need to send. You shouldn't be the one figuring that out for them. Does that make sense? Because we don't touch those documents. Those documents are in their power, and they are the ones who move them around.
This is the website there. Foreign education. It's called about foreign education must be equivalent to NCAR, NAAB. If the foreign education is equivalent, NCAR will certify the same in your green cover. Whatever that is, I have no idea. It's on the DBPR website. I
Well,
sent you the link.
I think you have to remember Gloria's idea. Are you trying to get licensed by having your education overseas being accepted, or because you're licensed in another country, you're simply having it accepted? So maybe there's the disconnect. How exactly did the information get tapped into the NCARB?
Yeah, and also take into account, this is one of the things, going back to that initial question, like the advantage of having your NCARB certification. When you are, the way I see it, and I've seen this with a lot of candidates, some people don't opt to have the NCARB certification, right? And they might not be foreign architects, so they have the option of having it or not. So what they do is they finish the 3 first steps, and then they go and start dealing directly with the architectural board of whichever state. And all the paperwork as an immigrant can get confusing, because sometimes the board asks for extra paperwork that you don't have on hands, and you have to go back to your school, or you have to do this or that. And again, the advantage of having your NCARB certification is that they send everything for you. So everything that they're asking, you don't have to worry about it, because they do it for you. Versus when you are trying to do, let me go back on this part. When you're doing this part or this path, you are the one sometimes having to deal with that paperwork that the board is asking for, which is not impossible to do. But again, sometimes for people who are immigrants, it can be a little bit more confusing than for someone who is from here, because they're familiar with certain terms and certain, they have everything that they need to. Paperwork that they required is like, a corner from their house, versus us that we sometimes have to travel back home and get paperwork from our college or our boards or whatever. So I think instead of focusing on kind of going to, directly to the board first, like start your process with NCARB and see if they transfer everything directly for you. To me, that was kind of the easiest way to do it.
And I'll reiterate that, I mean, obviously I was trained here, so I didn't have to do all of your steps, but I took the path, and many people of my generation, to have that NCARB number and certification. And then we asked NCARB to send, as you say, all the paperwork to whatever state I was in. And it's a lot easier. I mean, you do have to pay to have an NCARB file, but it's worth whatever they charge you, because you don't have to, as Gloria says, keep having to go back because the state is asking for something unique. Once NCARB says you're good to go, they can send
good
it to
to go.
whatever state you need to go.
Yeah, it
So it's
really
worth
saves a
whatever
lot
they
of
charge you.
headaches.
It saves you a lot of headache. I mean, I remember that from 30 plus years ago, that it was so much easier. Just give NCARB whatever they want. They will sort out what you need, and then they'll make sure that they give you the right paperwork to whatever state you're asking for.
All right, well, we're
He's
15 minutes.
asking something about.
Yeah, there are a couple more questions. I don't know if I can get you contact information for these people if you want to answer them offline, or because I know we're already 15 minutes over. I don't
Yeah.
want to take up the rest of your day.
So
Okay.
can I suggest maybe those people that have some specific questions, they can certainly contact maybe Becky. Well, obviously Gloria had all of her information there, but if Becky, I hate to give her more work, but she's always very good at sending it off to the right people.
This screen again. Here's my info again.
Yeah, and I do see the certain questions we didn't get to. I will send those on to Gloria. I will get them to you and the email addresses for the people asking them, so you can answer them personally.
All right.
Gloria, as always, amazing. Just from reading everybody's comments, everybody really, really appreciate your time, effort, and energy. There was actually one wanting to know how you did it all that Becky missed. And I didn't have to be licensed from a foreign country or education, but I certainly myself learned a lot. And I have staff that I was texting, are you on? Are you on? You know, you need to know this, because we know people that are licensed or educated somewhere else that we need to help. So thank you so much for doing this. This was fabulous as always, and you're a wealth of information. And as